All right, let's talk a little bit about phase one from NASM's Optimum Performance Training Model. You can look in the textbook and look at the DVDs or the good old VHSs and get some very good insight and information on them. I just wanted to touch a little bit more on the real-world application and provide a little bit of different insight on how this is applied and why it's applied, and maybe bring some different language to it other than just what's in the textbook and DVDs. So phase one is currently called Stabilization Endurance. The NASM's OPT model has gone through different evolutions over the years, but right now that's where it's at. The acute variables for phase one are 12 to 20 repetitions are performed for the strength training exercises. You're going to perform these repetitions with somewhere between 60 and 70% of someone's approximated 1 rep max. You're going to rest anywhere between 0 and 90 seconds based on the programming type, whether it's a circuit, vertically loaded, horizontally loaded, or full rest period if you have someone who is deconditioned. And you can do somewhere between 2 to 3 sets of each exercise that you're going to perform with a client, or even 2 to 3 sets per muscle group, again, depending on the total volume that you're going to do, and that's going to be decided by the client's fitness level, goals, and the rest of the program that they're going to experience. Some of the key things to think about when training in phase one, trying to achieve stabilization endurance, is we're using lower loads with slower movements. We're focusing on a 4-2-1 tempo, meaning we're going 4 seconds for the eccentric movement while the muscle is lengthening against resistance or during the negative, 2 seconds concentric with the muscle, 2 seconds isometric where the muscle is staying the same length or holding still or a pause, and then 1 second concentric where the muscle is shortening. So the text is written as 4-2-1. You'll see this in a lot of research articles. It's not necessarily how the exercise should be done. It's just to have some point of consistency. So when we're reading research or trying to understand the tempos, it's always written with the eccentric number first, the isometric number second, and then the concentric number third. So the recommended range for the phase one stabilization endurance is 4-2-1. Focus more time on the eccentric phase here because that's where most injuries happen. Most people don't have the control to decelerate their bodies very well. And when you see people in health and fitness environments, they're always concentric with no control. So most people get hurt because they can't eccentrically decelerate, so we focus on that. And most people, if you think about their jobs, they're sitting isometrically all day, so let's spend some time on that. And then concentrically we're moving for about 1 second. All in all, about a 7-second contraction. When we look at stimulating type 1 muscle fibers, it's going to take about 6 seconds to stimulate type 1 muscle fiber to get the most benefit out of it. And then, lo and behold, 7 seconds is really close to that. So that's what we look at. We're training in a controlled yet unstable environment. The reason that why we're adding some instabilities, we're trying to increase proprioceptive demand. So if proprioception is this cumulative neural input, we're trying to put more information into the client's receptors, whether the mechanoreceptors into the feet or the joint or other different types of stimulus. We're doing this because most of the adaptations, somewhere between the first 2 to 12 weeks of a fitness program, those adaptations are going to be neuromuscular in nature. Our nervous system is learning how to activate the muscles that we already have. We're not developing hypertrophy or building muscle fibers, but we want to learn to stimulate what we already have. A good example of this I heard from my friend Rob Retton years ago. And I don't know if many people get this one anymore, but I think it fits great. If you think of the old operator and the switchboard with their connecting calls. So, thank you for calling, Mr. Retton. Who can I connect you to? Oh, Mrs. Jones, line, on Street 4. So they take the plug out, they put it over here, they take the plug out, they put it over here. Most people don't have all those connections built up because they've been sitting slouched over for so long and have not been moving. The receptors are shut down. The brain doesn't know how to activate the muscles. So what we're doing is we're training in an unstable environment, and it's going to help the brain to be able to connect those circuits to the right place. It's going to put the calls through in the right order so the brain can recruit the right muscle at the right place at the right time with the right amount of force, or basically develop neuromuscular efficiency. So we're training in an unstable environment to help the nervous system be able to control the joints by using the muscles at the right place, at the right time, at the right amount of force. And that's the real goal there with the instability. By putting more information in, it's going to cause some co-contraction around the joints. It's going to eventually smooth out some movement patterns that we might have. One thing to be cautious of is too much instability. For years with this information, people would just think instability, one leg, and they'd be standing on 1 foot in a dynadisc doing single leg squats with a body blade doing P&F patterns with one eye closed reciting French while they juggle. That's not it. We're not looking for the most unstable exercise that someone can imagine. We're looking for controlled instability because as computer programs will tell you, junk in equals junk out. And the same thing for movement patterns is junk movement patterns in just poor movement patterns out. And for all the time and energy that it takes to groove a proper movement pattern, I've heard 5,000 to 6,000 repetitions, and that's not looking at doing flexibility work or periodization or sequential learning or using cues. But it takes a long time, even if you want to look at some of those old research studies, to groove a new movement pattern. So we want to make sure that people are learning right out of the gates as best as possible, or that we're rebuilding any of the patterns that they already have that are existing. So we're training in a controlled, unstable environment to put more information into the nervous system to force some of those connections, so we can then make sure in real life we can work in these unpredictable environments of walking around and stepping on a toy that's underfoot in one of your child's toy, or the difference between walking inside on a tile floor versus walking outside on a sidewalk, maybe a sidewalk that could maybe have some cracks, and then walking outside on a sidewalk that's wet, or walking outside on the sidewalk with a little bit of snow, or walking outside on the sidewalk with a lot of snow, or walking outside on the sidewalk with a little bit of slush, or walking outside with snow and then some black ice underneath, and then walking outside with some gravel or rocks over the sidewalk. So all these different surfaces that we have to be able to deal with. When we put our foot down, it doesn't always stay where it's going to stay. I got 3 kids, a cat, a dog. There's always stuff like Barbies under feet, Matchbox cars. I'm in the playroom in my house. There's always stuff there. You're not expecting it to be there. And you go to step on it, you feel it in your foot, and you have to react immediately to pick your foot up off it so you don't get impaled by the latest transformer that my son leaves laying around. Or I've got to step over a Barbie, or I've got to move around something, and the dog bumps me, or the cat's chasing the dog, and the kid's pulling the dog's tail. It's a 3-ring circus. You have to be able to respond and react. That's the purpose of reactive training with speed later. But if we don't have the coordination to be able to train in a multi-planar environment with different stimulus, that's when people get hurt. If we think 8.5 out of every 10 people that are going to have low back pain sometime in their life, a lot of that's because we sit all day. We can't use the muscles how we're supposed to use them. And then we go to move them and we can't decelerate, so we get hurt. The good news about low back pain is 50% of it goes away on its own. The bad news about low back pain is 50% of it is recurring. It is not so good. So we got to get people up, we got to get them moving, we got to minimize muscular imbalances. When we're following the acute variables of the NASM's OPT model for the resistance training portion, we're doing 12 to 20 repetitions for 2 to 3 sets at a 4-2-1 tempo. Resting for 0 to 90 seconds, doing 60 to 70% with approximate 1 rep max. We're doing this type of program 2 to 3 times per week, depending on if we're doing total body or split routine or some sort of hybrid or undulating program. But these are the subtleties, and we want to start with this type of training so we can establish the proper connection from the nervous system to the muscles. We don't want it to be too much. We don't want to promote synergistic dominance, because if we put too much strain or stress on a movement pattern, our body does not know how to react, or doesn't have the force production, reduction, or stabilization capabilities. The synergist will dominate the movement, and most people are already rife with synergistic dominance. Their movement patterns are off. There's unwanted wear and tear on joints. We see compensations in the movement patterns, so we must progress slowly. These exercises that we use are on a continuum. It doesn't have to be standing on one foot. It doesn't. Hold on a second. Yes. Okay, see, here's a cat. You wouldn't have predicted that would happen. You can stand on one foot. You can do half kneeling. You can do tall kneeling. You can do split stance. You can use a machine. You can use a stability ball. It's all a continuum. So you might have a beginning client that you're just giving a workout to and not going to see for a week, and put them on a machine with these acute variables. Have them close an eye, sit up, pick a foot up, put their feet on something wobbly. Or just give them the machine to learn the movement. I know there's not a great increase of proprioceptive demand, but the common sense must apply that they must do this safely without us. And then there's the other end of it. If someone's really dialed in, they can stand on something on one foot, do something wobbly, follow the neural continuum, alternate arms, alternate legs. Oops, sorry, that's the cat. Well, I'm running up on 9 minutes, and I know this is going to be up on YouTube with a 10-minute max. I hope this summary is a phase 1 program of the NASM's OPT model. Strength endurance has been helpful for you. I'm Eric Beard. Thanks for watching. Have a great night.